What's up, everyone? This is Raine Cruz, and it's time for the Rain Check with MMA reporter and Millions.co content creator Brianna Eckert. Hi, Brianna. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
I am doing good. Welcome back to the Rain Check. I just want to ask you before we dive into our UFC 311 recap. Have you recovered yet from UFC 311?
No. This is going to be like my therapy for it. And
Uh
like,
huh.
I'm going to get it all out here. And then I'm going to do my podcast. And then I'm going to get it all out again. But I'm still processing everything that happened. I mean, there was just so much. And you were there. So you're like on a whole different level as me. I was just watching it at the bar. So.
It's crazy. That was my first ever UFC event. It felt so good to just take it all in as a fan, to observe and kind of see how it goes live at the actual event. So it's amazing. And just to also feel the energy from the fans just cheering for the fighters. It's like, oh, electrifying. I love it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and that was a great crowd. It seemed like I mean, I couldn't really hear much of it because it was pretty loud in there where we were at, but I it seemed like a really good crowd, and I really liked all the graphics and stuff that they had in the Intuit Dome, and, like, when the fighters would walk out, like, Makhachev and Moicano, they had, like, the mountains for Islam, and then they had, like, the rainforest for Moicano, and it was really cool with, like, the music behind it too. So I thought that was awesome. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Sphere. Kind of gave me those kind of vibes. But yeah, it was really unique and interesting. So next time they do fights there, I definitely want to go because that looked amazing.
Yeah, they even have like the smoke effect and like the strobe lights.
Yeah.
Our seats actually they had like lights wherein if the fighter from the blue corner came out, it would light up, in blue, and then if it's a guy from the red corner, the lights would turn red. It's
Oh
really,
wow.
yeah, yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
they
now
definitely put a lot into the production for that for sure.
oh yeah, oh yeah. Maybe that's why the tickets were all expensive too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But you get what you pay for, like you get your
You do.
money's worth. Yeah, yeah. It was an amazing show. Now, as you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things that happened going into UFC 311. There was a huge shakeup for UFC 311's main event with Arman not being able to compete due to a back injury. Now, Renato Money Moicano, your boy, he ended up replacing Arman to face Islam. We'll dive into that later on, but UFC 311 was not a good night for undefeated streaks. We got four
No.
fighters that walked into UFC 311 to the Intuit Dome without an L, but they all walked out with an L. They all left Los Angeles with an L. We got Clayton Carpenter, Rinya Nakamura in the early prelims. They both lost their fights. Our favorite, Peyton Talbot, he finally got his first L, and I know, and
So
Umar
sad.
Nurmagomedov, oh my God, he also left Los Angeles with a big L. Ah,
That
let's
one
start
did not
with
surprise me, but Peyton Talbot did surprise me a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, because I saw the odds, and, I like to think the odds makers know what they're doing, and so
mhm.
I trust that, they kinda know what they're doing, but then I saw Merab was an underdog, and I saw, some other underdogs, like Eileen was an underdog, so I was like,
Mhm.
"This the math ain't mathin' here." So, I'm like, maybe the odds makers were having an off night. I don't know. But I definitely think that minus 1200 was not reflective of the performance at all. Now, what I will say about Peyton Talbot's performance is that he survived. He survived. He did not get finished. He defended a lot of the grappling transitions and submission attempts really well. He just couldn't defend the takedowns. So I think Peyton Talbot, like his striking is there. His striking is great, but I don't even think we got to see how great his striking was in that fight against Barcelos because that first round I could tell took away a lot of his confidence. And so we just didn't see the same Peyton until like the third round he started to heat it up, but by then, he was already losing the fight, so he needed a finish. And Barcelos is tough. He's not somebody you can just one punch knockout or one kick knockout. That's somebody that you have to beat, to win the fight. So I think that Peyton, he did show that he has heart. He showed that he doesn't quit. And he showed that he has some good grappling defense as far as like submissions and, getting out of some of those bad situations that he was in. But I think he could take some notes from, maybe somebody like Adesanya and look at his takedown defense combined with his striking and realize that you wouldn't have to defend the grappling that much if you could just defend the takedowns. So I would like to see him transform a little bit more into a mixed martial artist and evolve before he's handed another opponent like that. I think his next opponent should probably be somebody a little more striking heavy, and maybe they'll build him back up. But I definitely don't think it's the end of the road for him for sure. I know everybody's gonna be like, oh, the hype train's been derailed, but it's like, well, they kind of put a lot of pressure on him, especially with making him a minus 1,200 favorite. He doesn't seem like the type of guy who thrives in that type of environment. He seems like somebody who needs a little bit of a boost and needs a little bit of, encouragement to like really shine. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that if they built him up similar to how they did O'Malley, I think we would see a completely different result. So I am kind of surprised, at how the fight went down. But at the same time, when you look at Barcelos and his skill set and, his record and his experience, yeah, I mean, it really isn't totally shocking the way that it went down. So, yeah, we'll see what happens in the next fight, and we'll see who he gets matched up with next.
Yeah. A lot of people were cheering for Peyton at the Intuit Dome. And for Raine Barcelos, did you feel bad for him? Because the odds, literally the betting odds, were against this veteran fighter.
I think that probably only gave him more motivation. So I think for someone like that, where, they are a veteran and they are experienced, he's probably already going into this fight thinking, I'm going to school this kid, and then he looks at the odds and is like, oh, really? Okay. All right. Let's see who's minus 1,200 after this. So I think for him, he probably didn't care. He probably was just like, yeah, let's go. Let's see what happens. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And he did show to everyone that, hey, even though I'm the veteran fighter here, I still got what it takes.
Yes, absolutely. And he put on a beautiful performance. So shout out to Barcelos for making it happen, pulling off the upset, one of the biggest upsets we've seen in a while. I was even thinking it would be possible during the UFC 300 fights that we could see a big upset with Bo Nickel, because he was in a similar situation. We hadn't seen a ton of him in the UFC octagon yet. And so going against somebody like Cody Brundage, who isn't even as near as a vet as Barcelos, I thought there was a possibility, that Brundage would be able to maybe even beat him, and he did give him a tough fight, to be fair. But I think Bo Nickel, with having a wrestling background, gives you a little bit more of an advantage than a kickboxing background for sure. So I think that, yeah, he just needs to evolve and develop his grappling and mix it together, and I think he'll be fine.
We can't wait what's next for Peyton Talbot, and also to see Raine Barcelos back again, especially after the performance that he had at UFC 311. Now let's go to the main card. 4 out of the 5 bouts in the main card ended in a stoppage. Bre, I was there with my husband, and I was looking at the clock, and I was like, wait a minute, it's only like 7:30, and we're going into like bout number 2. That's crazy. And then bout number 2 ended in a stoppage as well. And I was like, oh my God, are we leaving here at like 8 o'clock or what? every fight was ending like really quick. Now let's start with the first fight in the main card between Kevin Holland versus Ranier de Ritter, RDR. He mentioned in his pre-fight interview that he was going to choke out Kevin Holland. That's how he saw the fight, ending. Bre, did you see the fight ending with that as well? RDR choking out Kevin Holland in the first round, by the way.
No. So I did not do any film study for this one like I normally like to do for the pay-per-views. So I was just kind of, guessing. And I am a ride or die Kevin Holland fan. So I don't think I've ever picked against him. So maybe when he fought Buckley, I might have picked against him, but that's about it. And that's because I'm from St. Louis. But I think that Kevin Holland is one of those guys that he fights so often that it's kind of hard to be consistent. And then when you look at De Ritter's resume and his experience before the UFC and won championship, he was even fighting in heavier divisions. And, sometimes there's tougher fights in ONE FC than there are in the UFC. But also Kevin Holland, look at his past experience, look at who he's beaten
Mhm.
and look at what he's been able to do. So it was kind of like, I didn't really know what to expect, honestly. I'm always going to pick Kevin. I'm always going to ride for Kevin Holland and hope that he wins because I'm just a big fan.
Uh,
But, whenever that happened, I was like, okay, next time might do a little film study and check up on his opponent a little bit more. Because, yeah, that was fast. I wasn't expecting it to end that early for sure.
yeah. Now RDR is 2-0 in the UFC, so we'll see
Oh,
what's
wow.
next for him. This is gonna be one of those winning streaks that you're like, okay, is this gonna keep going?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you beat somebody like Kevin Holland, I would say there's a pretty good chance that you're gonna make your way through the ranks there at 185. So we'll see.
hmm Now, another fight that ended in the first round was when Jelton Almeida defeated Sergey Polar Bear Spivak by TKO. He also got Performance of the Night um, at UFC 311. Do you think Almeida deserves Performance of the Night? And what did you think of that bout?
Yeah, I think both him and Islam probably deserve performance of the night. I think that was just a great fight. That
Mhm.
was one of the best heavyweight fights I've seen in a long time. And I wasn't expecting it to go down like that. I mean, that was a dog fight. I would call that a barn burner. Heavyweight's a slower pace, so you're not going to expect quite the same amount of action at
Mhm.
those heavier divisions, but they really put on a show. And honestly, in the first round, Spivak looked great. I thought, that there was a chance that he might be able to win. And when I saw that matchup, it was even hard for me to pick because, I think Almeida is the real deal. And I think that he has a lot of potential even to maybe become champion one day.
Mhm.
But Spivak has surprised me so many times. And, like whenever he beat, I think he submitted Marcin Tybura. A lot of people didn't think he was going to win that fight. I mean, I kind of knew he was going to win that fight because of his grappling, but but a lot of people didn't believe in him, and so he's kind of one of those like surprise guys in that division
Mhm.
where you never really know what he's going to do. And in the first round, I mean, his ground and pound looked pretty nasty, and I thought, potentially if he kept doing that he could finish Almeida. But Almeida turned it around, and I picked Almeida to win, so I was kind of excited that he won, and I got one right because Kevin Holland just got submitted. So I was like, oh dang. But yeah, I was impressed, and I'd say that was one of the best performances I've seen from him as far as the caliber of opponent goes.
That's good. And yeah, and I'm here to tell you that the crowd at UFC 311 as well loved that performance by Jailton Almeida. So he deserves that Performance of the Night bonus at UFC
Yeah,
311.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Now,
And he's in great shape too for a heavyweight. I mean, he looks like a machine. So it looks like it was built in a factory. So it's like, yeah, that's a dangerous combination. I mean, you look at guys like Cyril Gahn and, guys that have, they're not just in that division because they don't want to be disciplined with their diet or whatever it is. They're in that division because they are too big to fight at 205. And and even though they don't weigh that much more than the 205, I think there were like 235-ish or somewhere around there. It kind of got me thinking too that it might even be interesting if PFL ever dissolved, or if there was ever a big organization that dissolved and they could take some of the heavier weight classes
heavyweight.
and take some talent, that they could add another weight class in between 205 and 265. I think that would be really interesting. But I know the roster's too thin right now to do that. So we'll see if that ever happens.
Now let's move on to. I'm just gonna say that this might be Alex Pereira's favorite bout of the evening because it's between the battle.
Drama.
It's the battle between the two fighters that he had defeated last year. Yuri Prochazka versus Jamal Hill. Yuri won by TKO in the third round, especially after those eye pokes. He also got Performance of the Night. Did you see this fight making it to the third round or even going the distance? Like I said, there were eye pokes at least, I want to say in the first and second round.
Yeah, I think Jamal poked him first. Or no,
Mhm.
Yuri poked him first, and then
Yeah.
Jamal poked him back the second round. I thought the um Jamal's eye poke was a little bit worse when he poked Yuri. So you could kind of tell the way that Yuri reacted to it. But it was funny. I was listening to the post fight press conference, and Yuri was like, "Yeah, I don't think fights should be stopped because of eye pokes because I have another eye." So, like, he's just so crazy. I love it. He is such a warrior. Like, he does not care. And he's just like, "Yeah, I can see just fine. I'm good." So I had no doubt that he was going to either go the distance or go out on his shield. Both guys, honestly. I mean, after the fight with Glover Teixeira, I think everybody realized that Jamal Hill has a lot of heart and he's very tough and he's battle tested. So, even if it was a 5-round fight, I think there would be potential that it could go even further. But I think Yuri was just locked in,
Mhm.
and he had that girl that had cancer there supporting him. And so that had to give him an extra boost of motivation and focus. So I think that Jamal showed incredible toughness, incredible heart. He looked like a warrior, and I respect both guys, honestly. And that they put on a show. I thought that actually was going to be fight of the night. Even though it didn't go the distance, it almost did. And I
Mhm.
expected it to either go to the third round or go, all 15 minutes. But yeah, I just think that Yuri was just on it, and his head movement has gotten a lot better, I've noticed. And that was something that I asked him about at UFC 300, was like, how are you going to balance your defense with your offense? Because, a lot of times fighters like that who have more of a like a Muay Thai type style, they're very go forward, and they're very aggressive. So a lot of times they throw defense out the window, which is what he used to do. And so he's worked on that a lot, and you can tell. And if that Yuri shows up against Pereira in the next fight, then I think we might see a different result. And I'm not saying that Yuri's going to win because that's a really tall order. But if Ankalaev beats Pereira, then I wouldn't be shocked if Yuri gets to fight Ankalaev. Now I don't know if they would do a rematch versus, Ankalaev versus Pereira 2. I'm sure that he would want a rematch, but I think that would be a really interesting fight too because we've never seen that matchup before.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see. Now, Yuri said in his post-fight interview with Joe Rogan that he wants a third fight against Alex Pereira. Would you like to see a part 3 Yuri Prohashka versus Alex Pereira?
Yeah, so oh, yeah, so UFC 300 he fought Jamal and then Yuri fought Rakic
Oh,
and
there you go.
Yuri won that fight. And he looked great. He still looked like he could work on some defense. So, looking at that performance and then looking at the fight against Pereira, the second fight, and then looking at the performance against Hill, I do want to see that third fight. I think he deserves it. I think that he really only wants to fight on a really high level. And so if he's not getting fights like that, I just don't think that he's going to be super motivated. I think that, that's where we really see him shine is in those moments, those big moments. Um, and I think that the reason why he wants that third fight is because he knows what he's working on and
Mhm.
he's observing, he's he's watching. He's like, okay, I can do this, I can do this. And he almost thought about retiring after he lost to Pereira the second time. And so to see him come back and win like that in dominant fashion and really put the pieces together, and I really do want to see it again. I think I could
Oh,
see that
there.
fight 5 times. I don't care. I think it'd get better every single time they fight. It'd be more and more fun. And, seeing the fight with Helio Roundtree against Alex Pereira, that was a different fight too. I mean, Khalil looked like a warrior in there. So you never know. And I was thinking too, an interesting fight would be Khalil versus Yuri. If Yuri wins the
Ooh.
belt, at any point again, if he can get that belt back, I'd like to see Khalil fight again for the title too.
Well, now because you've seen Pereira versus Hill, I am manifesting for you, Bre, that if or when Yuri versus Alex happens, the trilogy, the part 3, you would be there. There you go.
I hope so. That would be fantastic. And
And
I
then
hope I get to interview him after the fight too, just like I did at UFC 300. That would be great.
there
And
you go.
another thing I was thinking of getting to the main event, which we'll talk about in a little bit because we still got the co-main, and the co-main was special. But Moicano was actually the first fighter that I ever asked a question to at a UFC event. So I thought that was really cool that going from fighting Jalen Turner, and then almost losing that fight, and then kind of bouncing back and winning and gaining some momentum and gaining some confidence, and he really has shown like how marketable he is too,
Mhm.
and he's so fun and hilarious. But I thought that was really cool because I was like, oh, that was the first question I ever asked was Money Moicano. So that was really cool just to see him go from there to fighting for a title. I didn't think that would happen that fast, so that was really cool.
I know. He got really lucky for you to get that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
On
So
one
we'll
day's
talk more.
notice.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the main event later on. Let's go to the co-main
Mhm.
event of the evening, which was the fight of the night as well. And it was the only fight in the main card that actually ended in a decision. It's
Yeah.
between the UFC bantamweight champion Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar Nurmagomedov. Merab retains his title. Umar leaves LA with an L. His first loss ever. Oh my God, Bre, what did you like the most about this fight?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things. Well, first of all, I'm a huge Merab fan. I've been a believer since I first saw him fight. I mean, we talked about this last time. I first saw Merab fight. I believe it was his fight with Casey Kenny, I think was the first one I watched. Which was like 5 or 6 years ago or something like that. And ever since then, I was like, that guy's special. He's gonna maybe be champion one day. And I'm not always right when I say that, but that time I was. So, ever since then, I've definitely been a believer in Marab, and I was really shocked to see that he was an underdog too,
Mm,
especially when he's holding the belt already. But knowing how tough Umar is and knowing his skill set and he's undefeated, and coming from the Nurmagomedov family, yeah, it shows that not only did he give Marab a tough fight, but they went the distance. So
mhm,
I think they had the right two guys in the octagon. I think that was the best matchup you possibly could have made in that division right now. And so, but Marab is just so good. I don't see anyone beating him anytime soon. I think he might even retire with the belt. I really do. I think that um that's possible for him. Now he is 34, so he's not, exactly young as most people are in this sport. Like Umar, I think is like 28 or 29. So I don't know how much time he has left in his career, but at the same time, I was thinking about this and thinking about his longevity and the way that he fights. He's not taking a lot of damage. It
mhm,
doesn't seem like, he puts on a really fast pace and he exhausts his opponent. He wears them down, but it's a style where I think you can get away with fighting for a longer amount of time because you're not getting in a war every single fight. You're not Nate Diaz. You're not Tony Ferguson. You're getting in there and you're putting on a show, which I think we really need to see more of this, where a fighter can figure out a way to make a decision fight exciting and to make it exciting without, it being like a just bleed type of fight,
mm,
like because as much as we love to see that and we love a good Yuri versus Jamal Hill type of fight, I love that, and I love a Forrest Griffin versus Stephen Bonner. I love that. But at the same time, I look at how the results of that down the road, and I don't like that, so I want them to protect their brain and protect their longevity. And so I think with Merab being a wrestler, the only concern with him is just probably, wearing down his body. I mean, he said he broke his back in his camp for this fight. He said, he visibly had an injury on his leg. There was like a big gash on his leg. Looked like it was infected. So, he's tough. He is very tough. And I think that, yeah, it's just going to be really hard for anyone to beat him. And I don't know what they're going to do next. I don't think they'll do a rematch with Umar. Maybe they will down the road if Umar gets another win or something like that. Maybe Umar can fight somebody like Figueiredo, or he can fight Sean O'Malley. That would be interesting. I think actually that would probably be the fight to make, would be O'Malley versus Umar. And then I would do Piotr Jan versus Merab for the next title shot. I think that just makes sense to me. I don't think there's anybody else in the division that deserves the next title shot in that division more than Piotr Jan. So
now
we'll
I know
see.
we're both Team Merab, Bre.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
a lot of people actually at the event were cheering for Merab. It was just so fun to watch him like live. I feel like he was trying to get the fans engaged too.
He's
Um,
really good at that.
yeah. You know what's funny is that when Bruce Buffer announced the winner, right? I could kind of tell that Umar tried to, like, I don't know if this was the referee doing it or it was Umar, but when Bruce Buffer said, and like right before he said still, I saw Umar's like arm kind of like move a little bit up. And I was like,
Yeah.
in my head, did he think he won the fight? Like, or was it just
I
kind
think
of
he
like,
did. I think I couldn't really quite hear everything he said. I did hear him say in the post-fight press, or not the press conference, the post-fight interview with Rogan, he said he broke his hand in the first round, but at the same time, Merab already came into the fight injured. So I was like, okay, well, you kind of going into it even, I guess. You're both injured, but he got injured during the fight. Merab was injured way before the fight. So I thought that was kind of irrelevant. And then now to fight with a broken hand and go all 5 rounds is very impressive, though, because your hand is kind of important when you're in a fight. But I think he did say that he thought he won the fight, or that he could have won the decision somehow. Yeah, I saw a post on Instagram too. I think it was last night that I shared it to my story about, how he thought he won the fight or whatever, thought the scorecards were in his favor, that he won 3 rounds out of 5 or something like that. And so I did a poll on Instagram. I'll check it right now, actually, see where we're at. And I asked, who do you think, how did you score the fight? And so let's see. So yeah, it's still the same results. So 0% of people thought Umar won 3 rounds. 38% of people thought Merab won 3 rounds. And then 62% of people thought Merab won 4 rounds. So I had Merab winning 4 rounds while I was watching it. I'd have to watch it again to really, make sure that isn't biased. But I thought he won at least 3 rounds. I thought Umar won the second round for sure. That was the only round that I thought he really kind of made a mark. The other rounds I thought you could give to Merab. I think the third one was close, but Merab definitely won the championship rounds in my opinion. And I thought he won round 1 for sure. So I was kind of confused. I was like, no. And also Merab's the champion. So, if you want the belt, in my opinion, you have to take it. And you have to at least win one of the championship rounds if you're down going into rounds 4 and 5, which he was, or it was either he was down 1 round or they were even, basically going into the 5th round. So I thought whoever won the 5th wins the fight, and Merab won the 5th round. So, I was like, how can you even argue with that? But it's probably different when you're in there, though, than when you're watching it on TV. So maybe we just, didn't see what he saw. Maybe he wanted to win so bad that he was just like determined, like, I won the fight. But I thought Merab won fair and square. So
now I have a fun fact for you with regards to UFC 311's co-main event. one of the UFC veterans, Chris Lieben. He was actually one of the judges for Merab versus Umar, and that was
Yeah,
his
I
first.
saw that.
Yeah, that was his first UFC title fight that he had to be a judge for. So congratulations to the crippler Chris Lieben for.
Well, he made the right decision.
There you go.
Good job, Chris. You made the right choice. That's
I know.
awesome.
Now let's go to the main event, the UFC Lightweight Championship between Islam Makhachev and your boy Renato Money Moicano. Like we talked about earlier, Islam was supposed to face Arman Sarukian, but Arman had to back out due to a back injury. Now, do you think Renato was the best choice to be Islam's opponent since there was no backup lined up for Islam?
Yeah, it also kind of makes me think, why didn't they have a backup? Maybe that would have been a good idea. To have somebody like Justin Gaethje on deck, or even maybe a rematch for Dustin Poirier would have been not a bad idea. It would have made more sense than Renato for sure, because Dustin lasted way longer than Renato did, and he's fought the best of the best in that division. So if it were me and I was picking somebody to throw in there, it probably would have been either Poirier or somebody like that who is a veteran and has been doing this for a long time and has fought in title fights before, so they know that feeling. They've already been there. Even Gaethje, I think, would have been a great option. A lot of people brought up Taporia. I don't think that would have been a good option, because then you're holding up two divisions, and I don't think Taporia stands a chance against Islam. Honestly, I think he's just a little too small. He has the power for sure, but I don't think that he would have. It just wouldn't have made sense to me, with all that he's doing at featherweight. It's like, why would you even do that? So I think that Moicano did make sense, considering he was there, he was available. The only other option I could think of that would have been available, I saw Michael Chandler was there, but that wouldn't have made sense because he really hasn't won that many fights in the UFC, and he was trying to get the Conor fight. Maybe if he would have focused on fighting somebody else instead of trying to get the money fights, then he could have been fighting Islam Makhachev in UFC 311. But there wasn't a lot of options on that short of notice. Now, if they had a couple weeks, maybe throw Volkanovski in there. I'm sure he would have. I'm sure he would have accepted the challenge again on short notice. And actually, if he was there, he probably would have just gotten in the octagon himself and said, "I'm fighting this guy." Like. But I think Australia is a pretty long flight from California, so that might not have worked out, and he probably wouldn't have been able to make the weight. So yeah, I think, considering the situation, that was the right choice. Dariush wouldn't have made any sense either. So it would have either had to have been him, or if it was a little bit more notice, I think Poirier would have been a good backup option. And yeah, but I think that this is a good experience for Moicano. Now he's fought in a title fight, and not a lot of guys can say that when they're at his stage in his career. They can't say, "Oh, I fought Islam Makhachev, the greatest lightweight arguably of all time." Him and Habib, they're probably neck and neck right now for the best lightweight of all time. And so for him to be able to say that he fought him, he's now associated with a legend of MMA, and he's associated with a very high level fighter, and he has the experience of going 5 rounds in a title fight. So I think it's only up from here for Moicano. I hope it doesn't take away his confidence and take away his momentum, because at the end of the day, he saved the main event, and we wouldn't have had that main event. We wouldn't have had a lightweight fight, a title fight, if it weren't for him. So props to Moicano for taking the fight. Things happen. It's MMA. There's a lot of ways to lose. There's a lot of ways to win. And he went out there and he did what a lot of people would probably be scared to do. So props to him for taking the fight and saving the main event.
Yeah, I know. Like, that was like a huge opportunity for Moicano. And I'm glad he stepped up to that opportunity.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
yeah. Now Islam won by submission due to a Darce choke 4 minutes and 5 seconds into the very first round. Did you expect this fight to end in the first round, or were you hoping to see more of Money Moicano putting up a fight against Islam?
Yeah, I was really surprised that he got submitted. I mean, I know Islam's really, really getting good at that Darce choke now, so
Mhm.
I'm not surprised about that. And that's a hard submission to escape. So even somebody with the level of jujitsu of Moicano, yeah, I mean, it's just hard to escape that. I mean, he was cranking on his neck. It's not one of those things where you just go to sleep. It's like, that hurts. Like you're in a lot of pain. So I think that, Moicano, yeah, it's unfortunate, but Islam, what a beautiful performance. And to get a first round finish, take no damage, he's going to be ready to go for his next fight. I'm curious to see if they're going to book the rematch with Charles Oliveira, because Dana
Mhm.
White said that Arman is not getting the next title shot because he said that the doctor apparently had cleared him to fight and he still pulled out. So now I do think it's a little hypocritical because Charles Oliveira pulled out of a title fight against Islam as well. And he did have more notice. I think it was 2 weeks, and that was the fight where Volkanovski subbed in for him, which that was a competitive fight. But Charles had gotten cut, and I'm just sitting here thinking, what is he doing sparring like that 2 weeks before the biggest fight of his life, or maybe not the biggest fight of his life because he's been around the block, but a big title fight like that where he has the potential to beat Islam Makhachev. I was like, oh dang, like that's unfortunate. So I didn't expect Dana to just write Arman off that fast like that, considering that Charles had also pulled out before too. But then when he said that, Arman had been cleared to fight and that there were, I guess, he was frustrated with that, maybe he'll
Mhm.
change his mind. Because if you look at it, there isn't another fight that makes more sense, in my opinion, than Arman because he went the distance with Islam already in the past, and that was his UFC debut. So it's not like it was 2 years ago, 1 year ago. This was years ago that they fought. So they have history and it's been a long time. And Arman, I think, has the skills. I still believe that he can beat Islam. But one thing that I was thinking about, and I think it was Gabriel Gonzalez that asked this question in the media day. He was asking Arman about, are you rich? Like, do you have a lot of money? And he was like, yeah, I don't have money, but my dad's very successful. And it got me kind of thinking, I think in this sport, it's kind of interesting, like being financially taken care of or wealthy or whatever you want to call it. I think does give you a huge advantage as far as like building your career because you don't have to worry about working a job. You don't have to worry about struggling to pay your bills, and that financial stress can really weigh on you as a fighter. Even when you're on a high level, like Alex Pantoja, he said he was doing Uber driving, while he was like making his way up the ranks of flyweight. So I think that it can give you an advantage. But then you look at somebody like Moicano, who is obviously very hungry and wants to make money. He's got these kids he's got to take care of, and he wants to provide for them, and he wants to, he's creating his own wealth. And so I think you see a difference in the hunger level. And even though he went out there and he lost, I do think that it can either give you an advantage or it can give you a disadvantage too, because then you're not as hungry. And
Mhm.
would Arman have taken that fight if he had the same hunger that Moicano had? I think he would have, because he would have been like, I ain't gonna get paid if I don't take this fight. So, it makes you think, like, does that kind of give him less motivation to really get in there and do it no matter what, like by any means necessary? Because Merab went out there and he fought with back injuries. He fought with, a leg injury. And it's not any shade on Arman, because I'm still a huge Arman fan and I'm a big believer that, he's the guy. He's the guy to beat Islam. But I do wonder, how hungry is he to win that belt? That's the only thing I wonder. So we'll see.
Mm. Yeah, well, we shall see. Now, you kind of answered the question that I'm about to ask you. So I'm kind of like sensing that for Islam, you kind of want to see him face Arman next then?
I would like to see that. I think that fight needs to happen. I think that there is also, I saw somewhere, and I don't know how accurate this is, and I don't know who the source is. I think they said it was maybe Islam's manager who said this, but potentially they were working on creating a 165 division, and then Islam would be moving up and basically, yeah, creating that. So I don't know if that is a possibility. If
Mhm.
it is, then I don't know who he would fight in that division. I don't know if they would bring somebody down from welterweight, or if they would move Arman up to that division, or move Charles up to that division, or whatever it is. I don't know what that is about. um, that would be interesting though, because then it would kind of allow fighters to fight on, in the toughest division at lightweight, but also give them an opportunity to fight without having to really dehydrate themselves. And maybe we would see better performances. Maybe we would see more exciting fights if that were the case, if there was kind of an in between
Mhm.
division. Or potentially Islam could move up. I know he won't fight Bilal Muhammad because they're friends. So it would have to be if, let's see who's fighting. So Leon Edwards is fighting Jack Della Maddalena. I can't remember if Bilal has a fight lined up next. I'm not sure. But there is a lot of movement going on at welterweight. So obviously the winner of JDM versus Edwards is probably going to be next in line for the title. And, it'll either be a rematch for Leon and Bilal, or it'll be JDM's first title shot, possibly. And then we have, I'm from St. Louis. I gotta shout out Joaquin Buckley. He's climbing the rankings right now. And honestly, I think he has all the skills in the world to win the title at 170. So I think that would be really cool to see. And then I also think it would be cool to see Islam move up, because he does say that he doesn't want to retire until he gets a second belt. So we'll see what happens. But I would like to see the Arman fight before he moves up. I think, or potentially, here's another option. I just thought
Mhm.
of this. So if Islam moves up, if let's say Bilal loses his next fight somehow, and he loses the belt and somebody else wins the 170 title, and Islam moves up, then they could do potentially like an interim belt for Arman and Charles. They could do a rematch, because that was a competitive fight, and in a 5 rounder, who knows what would happen between Arman and Charles. So I think that would be really interesting. So we'll see. I actually would rather see a rematch of Dustin Poirier and Islam than Charles versus Islam, honestly, just because it was more competitive in my opinion. And I think that even though Dustin probably wouldn't win in a rematch, I just think that he probably has the most potential of anybody outside of Arman. And then Charles is just right there, but below Arman, in my opinion.
Okay. Now, how about for Merab? If for example he does not retire yet, like you kind of mentioned earlier, who do you think he should face next for his UFC bantamweight championship?
I think Piotr Jan, the rematch, that is the fight to make, in my opinion. I know Sean O'Malley's probably going to want the rematch too, but I think Jan deserves it a little bit more. I think he's more of a veteran. He's beaten more former champions. So I would give it to Piotr Jan. Also, stylistically, that's a much better fight, in my opinion. And then I think Sean O'Malley should fight movement too in that division. Figueiredo's hanging around. He lost to Piotr Jan, but he gets 1 or 2 more wins. We could see him back in the title picture at 135. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, right now I'd like to see Jan versus Dvalishvili for the next bantamweight title.
Okay, okay. Now, this is going to be the hardest question for you, Bre. Before I let
Oh boy.
what was your favorite fight from UFC 311?
That is a tough one.
So many
I think I'm gonna
choices.
go. I think I'm gonna go with Jamal Hill versus Yuri Prohaska. I think that was my favorite.
Okay, okay.
I
So,
think I think that Merab versus Umar, I already kind of knew that that fight would probably go all 5 rounds, so I kind of expected that. I thought that Yuri versus Hill would go the distance. I didn't think it would be a finish, just because they're both so tough, and Glover Teixeira couldn't finish Jamal. So I was like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I thought Jamal was going to try to use some wrestling too. So it
Mhm.
went differently than I expected. So I think that's why I kind of thought that fight was the most exciting to me. And also, there was a little bit more blood. So that's always exciting. But I'm a big fan of Jamal and Yuri, so I think that also just because I saw them both at UFC 300 kind of has a little bit more spark for me. But yeah, it's kind of a toss up between the co-main event and that fight. But I might go, yeah, I might go Yuri versus Jamal. I think that was probably my favorite.
It's a good choice, though.
Yeah, it was. I think all the fights were awesome,
Yeah.
actually. In Almeida versus Spivak, that was a good
Mhm,
one too.
mhm.
So it's hard. It's hard to choose, but yeah, that's what I'm going with. What was your favorite fight?
Ooh, for me, God, definitely the Merab versus Umar.
Yeah,
Mostly because when Merab won the belt back in Las Vegas, Noche UFC, I was hoping I would be able to watch it at the Sphere. Um,
yeah,
I remember after he won, I asked my husband, "Hey, let's at least drive down the strip. I want to see the outside of the Sphere." And I took a picture, and like I a picture of like Merab and
yeah,
after he had won the title, and from there, from that night, him winning the belt to his first title defense, I got to see it live at UFC 311. So I took another picture, and from at this time, I was actually inside the venue.
yeah,
So it was very special for me to just kind of see how Merab won the title. Well, I didn't really get to see the fight. I was outside of the Sphere, but to finally see him perform and defend his title live at UFC 311,
yeah.
especially against Umar Nurmagomedov, that
Oh
was
my
that was
gosh, yeah,
really special for me. Yeah, yeah. So it's mostly kind of like with you, when you picked Yuri versus Jamal Hill, it's because kind of personal. I finally
oh
got to see
yeah,
Merab live.
definitely. Well, it's funny. I saw Marab. I didn't see Marab at UFC 300, but I saw him at the gym whenever I went to go tour Syndicate.
Mhm.
And so, like, and he was just kind of, running in while I was running out, and they were about to start class. But I did see him, so it was kind of cool, just to see his energy, and he was like bouncing up and down on the mats and stuff, typical Marab fashion. So that was cool. But yeah, he just seems like a fun person and somebody
Yeah,
that I like to support. So,
like a
yeah, I'm glad he
genuinely
won.
nice guy, right?
Yeah, I would think that he's probably just one of those people who's just very positive and uplifting, and that's who I want as champion. I want somebody who is going to not only win fights, because that's not what it's all about. There's kids watching, there's people who are aspiring professional fighters, there's amateur fighters watching, and they want to see that. They want somebody to look up to, and I think Marab is a great role model. So I'm really glad that he won.
Yeah, and in his post fight interview, he mentioned how he believed that he could do it, and he did it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
congratulations, Merab.
absolutely.
If
A
you're
great
listening to us right
performance.
now, congratulations.
Yes, it was a beautiful performance. It was even better than I expected, honestly. It
Yeah.
was.
Oh, I
So,
can't
that
wait to
was
see
fun.
him fight again. Now, Bree, thank you so much for joining me here on the Rain Check.
Yeah.
I love that we got to do this UFC 311 recap because we talked about your predictions last week. I know we posted some of the reels online, and we got some people chatting online, responding. They didn't think that Merab would win. So, well, at that time too, they didn't think that Arman would win, but we didn't see that fight anyway. But
Yeah, I know,
you
it's
know,
kinda
people talk,
disappointing,
Bree,
but
right?
well, thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun. Of course, anytime you wanna do these, hit me up. I'm always down because I have a blast every time, so
Well,
absolutely.
hashtag women in MMA. I love it, Bree. Hey,
Let's go.
guys, please do follow Brianna Eckert on Instagram at Bre.Eckert, BRE.ECKERT, and book her as well for an interview or watch parties right here on millions.co. Follow me as well on Instagram at Ringside Rain, and that's Rain with an E, Raine. Oh my God, Bree, thank you so much for joining me. She is Brianna Eckert. I am Raine Cruz. This is the Rain Check, and we are checking out. Bye.
Bye, thank you.